Okay, I guess we are live. So, welcome everybody to the beta test 2. This is more of a test for forecast discussions that we were going to do, especially throughout the year when we have bigger setups. We'll also be doing some showcasing for with some YouTube videos and stuff, and kind of discuss that. We've taken a few major setups that we had in our history here in the central U.S. to kind of look over the setup and talk about it. First off, we're going to start off with March 13th, 1990, which was a very, very odd setup. Let me post, I guess, yeah, we're going to post those in Stormtrap chat. Those of you in Stormtrap chat, I guess we're going to kind of use this as our little chat room. I mean, even though it's 2 minutes behind. So, but let's go ahead and start off. Let's look at some of the charts, especially. I mean, there's not much information for something back in 1990. And I'm sure there's a lot more information if I really looked hard, but this is just stuff I kind of pulled up real quick. Oh, by the way, there's Skip.
Hey, everybody.
So, the surface pattern for this day is actually kind of a strange one. Well, I mean, I guess from mid-March it was not too bad, but I've definitely seen better in mid-March before. So let's throw that up here. And you can see this was the surface flow at 21Z of March 13th, 1990. Quite a lot going on here. There's some really good backflow up here in Nebraska with some mid to upper 50 dew points. Looks like there's a peak of about 56-degree dew point there. Of course, there was a pretty large tornado and up there in Grand Island that day. Probably rooted down on that warm front and just kind of went crazy from there. Further south, you know, the low-level flow was not that great. You can see good dew points in southern Kansas where Heston had that F5, but there really wasn't a whole lot of flow, low-level flow, and the dry line doesn't really have that kind of great convergence, so there was something else going on there. I don't know, Skip, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm still looking at this surface chart myself. I mean, there's got to be more to this picture here because that moisture looks pretty marginal to me. There had to be some really cold air aloft or some rapidly deepening lows or dynamic forcing there. But yeah, just looking at this surface chart, I wouldn't expect a violent tornado outbreak. There's a deep low, but yeah, the winds at the surface are not that pronouncedly backed, and yeah, I wouldn't expect there to be too much instability there with those surface parameters.
Yeah, I mean, 70 over 63. I mean, that sounds fine and dandy for March, but you just wouldn't expect a very violent, F5 tornado in those conditions. And we'll switch over to the 500 chart here about 0Z. Skip pointed out that it looks like the main energy stayed well to the southwest of where the tornadoes happened. Of course, they're nosing into that area quite well, but yeah, it looks like the main bulk of the energy was off to the southwest of where all the action was happening. And as you can see, kind of a double low setup with the main low sitting over here in the Four Corners area, and then a secondary low developing right here in western Nebraska. So, I mean, the temperatures aloft, really, I mean, negative 16 there in Dodge City, I mean, that's not really that cold for a big severe setup. So, yeah, perhaps there was some overnight convection in southern Kansas the day before or the morning of and threw out some outflow boundaries for those storms to really work with. And here There's all the reports from that day. And I mean, there's tornadoes all along the warm front in Iowa and over in Nebraska. Of course, the Grand Island tornado, which I believe was an F3, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, the F5 here that went through Heston, Kansas in the afternoon hours. And quite a few tornado reports in southern Oklahoma, too, which if you go back to that surface chart, Skip, I mean, southern Oklahoma, I mean, it's got more moisture to work with, but, you know, the flow just wasn't there.
I'm looking for another boundary in there because you can see there's groupings of tornado reports, you know, in south central Kansas and central Oklahoma there. And I'm almost wondering if there's a secondary boundary there or an outflow boundary. I'm trying to look just at those wind barbs, but I mean, they're pretty coarse. I didn't see any pronouncedly backed wind barbs in that location. There's a few that are pretty backed there. I'm not sure what station that is, McPherson or something, maybe. Emporia, maybe. It's pretty backed. And again, down there by Oklahoma City, you can see the wind barbs are pretty backed. Do you have a visible satellite or something? I'm wondering if there was some sort of outflow boundary or...
There might be, but just with the website I'm using, they didn't have it.
Okay.
BangladeshTornadoes.org, great quick reference to some of the older setups in our past. Even though you know, the surface wasn't that impressive, you could see, you know, quite a bit of cold air behind everything. So there was a pretty big dynamic in the surface in terms of the temperature swing, with, you know, snow reported in Denver and Lyman, and then you know, just, you know, really juicy 70-degree dew points, which I would imagine probably with the 500 flow and how cold the temperature's off, had some pretty good lapse rates going on throughout that whole day. And the only other thing I noticed is back on the surface chart, you can see down south in southwest Oklahoma, there looks like a pretty pronounced dryline bulge, if that is indeed a true reading of the dew points, which easily could have helped spark initiation despite the main flow being displaced off to the west of that area.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would want to look at this event in more detail and kind of research it. I mean, this is the first I've really seen of this setup, actually. So I haven't actually researched this at all, but these charts are kind of the first data I've seen. But yeah, just at an initial glance here, there's got to be more. There's got to be more to this story. So you get that kind of a long track tornado, a long track F5 with low 60s dews, and the 500s are not particularly strong. I mean, they're strong and they definitely support severe weather, but when I'm thinking of like a high risk outbreak with violent tornadoes, I'm really expecting, you know, the 500 millibar winds to be pushing 90, 100 knots. So, and we got 60 knots there across south central Kansas, which is pretty good. I mean, that would be amazing for late May and June, but for March, when your moisture is kind of lacking, I don't know. There's got to be more happening there. Although for early March, you know, mid 60s dews are really good. So.
Another thing I noticed, you know, of course, we talked about the warm front up in Nebraska really helps put down some tornadoes, including a wedge out there by Grand Island. You can see between the different readings from North Platte to Omaha, there's quite a big drop off in terms of the mid-level flow. You know, just barely 35 knots over in Omaha. So, you know, Grand Island, maybe, oh, I don't know, probably good 40 knot probably if you kind of split that down the middle in terms of 500 millibar winds. But you can see the difference in the divergent flow in the mid-levels with the due south mid-level flow there in North Platte, which probably has a lot to do with that secondary low sitting out there, and compared to Omaha, which is more of a southwesterly, classic southwesterly flow. But yeah, I mean, it is a very strange setup. You know, we're not a stranger to these kind of setups, so I think we've seen a lot of these happen before, where stuff doesn't look all that great and impressive, and turns out to be a, you know, pretty big day. So. But we'll go ahead and jump into some of the footage here that I got. Of course, Heston, Kansas is probably the more popular footage of the actual tornado ripping through Heston itself. But we'll go ahead and first start off with the Grand Island, Nebraska stuff. Well, before I do, I know I messed this up last time, so I'm going to cut your camera off, like I said. Otherwise, we're going to get Skip might be popping in and out. So I'll figure this out eventually. Okay. So this is the Grand Island, kind of the birth of it. I'm not sure where exactly in terms of Grand Island this was actually shot, but I always think it's so crazy when you see a tornado happening when it's, around March where there's like no leaves on the trees, because that's just something you don't normally see.
At least your visibility is a little bit better. Marcus, even though you cut my camera, like, it's still making my icon full screen when I talk.
Well, crap. I don't know why it does that. So it's cutting back to you?
Yep. You see my Google Plus avatar.
Okay. Well, I'm going to kick this part of you out because you have one part of you that I guess shouldn't be here.
That's...
Or is that your other computer?
I've got it on my desktop and my laptop so that I can look at what's happening on the screen in more detail.
Okay.
Like I actually can't read the I can't read those surface obs really well on the stream. So I was playing on my other computer. I don't know how well they're going to show up in the recording. We'll see.
We'll see. Well, it's kind of weird that it's not. I thought I had that figured out where if I just cut your camera, it would not cut you, or it would not come back to you if you started talking. Okay. Because it's gonna suck to be like, shut up, Skip. Let's just watch this. That's not cool.
Well, I mean, we need to be able to comment on the video as it's playing, especially if we're not going to do the audio through it. So we'll probably need some manual camera control.
Yeah, which is weird because I thought I had that figured out here. I got the control panel set up for the room. Well, here, I guess since that's not going to work, I'll bring you back in.
So these long track tornadoes were happening at 6. That's the time of the tornado, right? We got this long track at 6:15 p.m.
Yeah, if you look back on the surface chart,
so that's a nocturnal tornado then, isn't it? I mean, we're still pretty early season. It's getting dark then, isn't it?
Yeah, I would imagine that's pretty close to dusk. The first tornado report near Heston, or for the Heston tornado, was at 4:34 p.m., which March. That's already getting close to sunset, and then by 6:15, it's still going, and even some of the stuff in Nebraska, and I think I made mention of this to you. There's tornado reports up in Nebraska at 4:48 p.m. And then just south in northern Kansas, there's another string of reports that started at 6:45, which would be 2 hours later. So those were definitely nocturnal tornadoes, which, those are still kind of a mystery to me in terms of how to forecast nocturnal tornadoes, which is just kind of tricky, I believe. I noticed there was one random tornado report at 2:36 p.m. out by Dodge City, which is pretty early in the day, but according to the surface chart, by 21Z, which 21Z in March would be, what, 3 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay, by 21Z, and I'll bring this back up real quick because this is interesting now that I noticed that. So 21Z is about 3 o'clock. That means at 2:36, which, as you see here, I'll zoom in on this. Tornado report out here by Dodge City. And you can see how far the dry line has advanced further east. You know, just a few minutes later, there's southwesterly winds and really low dew points out here in Dodge City, which means that front was advancing not the front, I'm sorry, the dry line was advancing very, very quickly for it to do something like that, which, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't remember a time where you can get a tornado to develop very quickly on the dry line, on an advancing dry line. It must have been something brief and maybe just a small spin up or something, but I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to have to see satellite and the radar to see kind of what happened here. I'd really like to research the event, actually. And you've actually sparked my interest in this event because, again, you know, I'm seeing these surface parameters you see in the spring pretty much every spring. You get a nice day where it's 70 and the dews are getting in the low 60s. And we don't have the Heston F5 every year. So something's going on there. And I'd like to look at that further.
Yeah, that's definitely it.
Plots here, or even the lifted indices, I mean, that's pretty decent. And again, they might not be. You know, Cape might be something like 1500, and but combined with the dynamic forcing from that trough, you might have enough there to get a violent tornado. Which is what happened on the Henryville day, March 2nd of 2012. We had Cape at around 1,000 to 1,500, and that was it. And but again, at 500 millibars, we had 90 to 100 knots. So there was a ton of dynamic forcing there, and we had a long track violent tornado.
Funny story. I was this close to just saying, screw the rest of the season. I'm getting a plane ticket to Indy and chasing that storm, and then chasing that event.
Yeah. See, I wouldn't recommend that at all. And I felt like we really got lucky on that day because it's a terrible place to chase. The Ohio River Valley is not good at all. I don't think I would ever recommend that a plains chaser come up for an Ohio River Valley setup. I mean, it just screams bust. And we originally weren't going to chase down there just due to the terrain, but our original target kind of north of there in better Indiana terrain just wasn't panning out. It was too far north, so we kind of got suckered down to the south, and we just happened to find a vantage point. But yeah, otherwise I would not recommend that at all. I think that's going to be a big waste of money. But yeah, another early season March setup, kind of dynamically driven by a very strong trough, one of those high risk, extreme shear, low instability events. I'm wondering if there was something similar going on here. Although out in the plains, and you've got kind of 70 over. I'm looking at what is that? It looks like it's Wichita or just north of Wichita. That 70 over 63 surface and Heston's just kind of north of there, isn't it? So,
yeah, I would believe that's Hutchinson, Kansas, and Heston. I believe it's just to the west of Hutchinson, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so yeah, I'm looking at this 69 over 62, 70 over 63. In the high plains where the terrain's a little bit higher elevation, yeah, maybe they're pushing 2,000 Cape, and you had some pretty strong shear. But I'm not seeing anything that's knocking my socks off here. But I mean, this is just a tiny sliver of the picture. And there might have been really strong warm air advection, too. I'm looking further down the dry line. I don't see too much moisture further south in Oklahoma. Again, it's 62, 63, 64, 65 down there. So I wouldn't expect the moisture to go up.
Yeah, there's a 68-degree dew point, looks like in Lawton that day.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean that's like the outlier though. I mean, there's that
yeah.
168, and otherwise it's in the low 60s. So
And it's a very, very narrow band of moisture because if you look out in like Arkansas and further to the east, you can see it starts dropping back down into the 50s. So it was just kind of confined into those that Texas coast up through Oklahoma, that kind of little channel of moisture. It's not very much, but um, yeah, there was definitely something else going on that back in 1990, I'm sure was not a very uh, easy to forecast day, compared to what we have now. I think maybe today this would be one of those chases where everyone's like, yeah, there's definitely pretty good potential, but back then, it may not have looked as clear as it does now in
yeah. How
hindsight.
about soundings out of Wichita? Do you have like a 0Z sounding or an 18Z special sounding out of Wichita maybe? I'm wondering if there was like a really strong low-level jet going on. I'm pretty sure there was, because those early season events are often marked by really strong shear, really high helicity values. You often have that cranking 60 knot southerly low-level jet.
I'm looking through SPC, and of course, they only have a limited, time period.
Okay, well that's
So,
cool. Why don't we move on to videos then?
all right.
We don't
I
have a
think what I can do with the videos is, if you got something you want to talk about, then you can say something, and it'll go back to you. But then I'll go ahead and talk back, and like you said, I guess it'll bring it back to me. So I don't know. That's kind of a weird thing. I thought I had that in control, but I guess not. Hangouts is still new to me, so I'm not too sure. But all right. So we'll go back to that Grand Island tornado. We're going to skip ahead just a little bit here. I mean, it's still not a particularly strong-looking tornado even at this point. It looks like a pretty marginal tornado. Of course, it could keep growing. Looking at the base too, it doesn't look so much like a large RFD cut or anything. Or maybe, well, I guess just right above where the camera is, there looks like maybe some clearance, and that might be the RFD cut.
Marcus, we can't see the video at all.
Oh! Why you do these hangouts? Okay, well, I'm glad you told me. Let me try that again. Okay, how about now? Skip.
Yep, got it.
All right. Sorry about that, folks. I'm sure there's going to be plenty to come when we do the actual podcast.
I'm going to mute my mic so I'm not typing over.
Okay. There we go. Zooming back out. You can see some clearing, I guess, to the left. Probably the RT cutting in. Pretty large rain-free base on the storm. Looks like we're looking towards the tornado, and looks like, I don't know, it's hard to tell. Maybe directly behind it is the actual forward flank downdrafter off to the right. I believe this tornado moves pretty close to the camera. So if this is a north moving storm or even just a due east moving storm, I believe they're looking due north, or maybe even back a little back to the northwest on this tornado. I know you guys don't get audio, but they all these 90s footage, it's so awesome because they have the most eeriest sounding tornado sirens all the time. I mean, you look at stuff in Kansas, especially the April 26, 91 outbreak, when you hear those sirens going off in Kansas, it's just so eerie. Hey, Skip, with the right lighting, this could probably look like Campo too.
Yeah. This looks like a March tornado to me. The
Yeah,
brown treeless terrain, that kind of steely blue, purpley storm base, very March-esque.
yeah, and you notice there's still no leaves on the branches of the trees, so yeah, that's pretty indicative of early season setup. Skip ahead just a little bit here. That way you guys can maybe I can't skip ahead. There we go. Nope. Let me bring this back because this is a pretty cool part where the tornado really gets close and it just kind of wisps up these multi-vortex, which is really cool, you know. And yeah, you're right. This is definitely a March tornado just because, you know, it's not a fully condensed tornado where the low level moisture probably isn't as much as we normally are used to. So you kind of get that vortex breakdown looking to it. You can see a little multi-vortex action going on. That's always cool. Strangely enough, this is a female behind the camera, and she sounds extremely calm compared to uh, most footage where everyone's freaking out, but she seems pretty calm. Of course, people are trying to tell the tornado to please disappear, as if the tornado has ears. Yeah, right now they just can't tell if it's moving towards them or not, and it looks like the tornado might be dissipating. Definitely a kind of a cool rope out phase right here, but I believe it kind of comes back as a big tube again. It kind of reinvigorates itself. And right about here, you can hear the roar. Very audible roar right about here. So tornado's probably about a mile away. Would you say, Skip?
Yeah, I would say so. This video goes to show why I don't blow off March setups if they look good.
Yeah, I mean this is a right about here where it gets pretty close, but you know it's not a solid tube, which is always awesome. Just it has that wispy phantom look to it when the tornadoes look like that, where the edges are very soft looking.
Still
But
looks like it's maturing. You see that multi-vortex debris cloud where the condensation funnel hasn't filled in all the way. And, that tornado often gets a lot bigger when you see that.
yeah, and right here it just goes right behind a few houses. I don't think it gets them. But yeah, you can tell how that storm. It was really odd where the tornado looked like it was in that multi-vortex stage, and it looked like it was starting to break down. And then right here, you can just see it has intensified quite a bit. It's become pretty large. Very reminiscent right now. It's kind of reminiscent to the Mapleton tornado. And well, this part of the video right here did just kind of shoot in the sky for whatever reason. But yeah, that there at the end, it kind of looked like Mapleton, Iowa. So okay, all right. I have another Nebraska tornado lined up. By the way, Vortex VA Roy Bridge channel is probably the best channel on YouTube in terms of tornado footage. I don't know where he gets all this footage from, but he has to look really hard for that, I'm sure. Okay. So we'll go ahead and look at this one again. This is Guide Rock, Nebraska. Hold on. Come on, screen share. There we go. Now, I'm not sure if this is the same storm or not, but if it is, then damn. Obviously, that thing got a lot bigger, pretty much just wedged out further down the line. Really big rain-free base. I mean, really big.
Yeah, it's impressive how much clear air there is to the north of that tornado.
You got to think on radar, this just kind of had that classic hook to it with the circulation well displaced away from the actual precip. Probably would have had a debris ball too, you know it. And right here, this is kind of cool. Starts sucking in some of that scud off the side there, kind of increasing in size. Kind of looks like the Columbus tornado we saw yesterday, where some of that tornadic circulation was quite a bit wider than the actual vortex on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, this is just classic wedge. And if it's the same tornado, yeah, I mean, you could really see kind of the evolution there where it starts with a multi-vortex, vorticity noodles spinning up, and then finally that big wedge phase.
Yeah, I've seen that quite a few times recently on a lot of recent chases. Not personally, but just through some videos where the tornadoes kind of start out small, but then they become a well-established, you know, stovepipe or cone tornado, and they just grow in size from there. I mean, Valdo was kind of the first thing that came to mind when that thing just started off as kind of a wispy tube for a little bit. You know, obviously it was a pretty strong tornado to begin with, but you know, it quickly evolved from kind of a stovepipe or a cone tornado to, you know, the famous wedge tornado, and in relatively clean air for a little bit. You know, obviously it got shrouded in rain, but you know, there was actually some pretty good clearing on that one as well. It's pretty bright behind them, so I'm guessing they're now east of it, looking due west, back into the clean air.
Who shot this? Is this chaser footage, or is this another local?
It's home footage as well. I believe these people just got in their vehicle to get out of the way because they're talking about, well, so-and-so's house might get hit here and blah, 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 kind of that talk. So I don't know if you saw that glimpse of the updraft structure to the left when they were back there. Still, I mean, that's an impressive tornado for March. Now,
yeah, this screams high shear, low instability setup. You've got a nice striated supercell updraft tower above it. You've got plenty of separation between the tornado and the forward flanking precipitation.
Yeah, and you know, if you go back to, like, you know, the charts that we were looking at, you know, the area in Nebraska wasn't particularly too impressive. I mean, there was barely some low six. Well, actually, there was just upper 50 dew points crashing up against that warm front. So for upper 50 dew points, this is mighty impressive. But of course, you know, maybe that's the payoff you get when you have a storm that kind of gets rooted on that warm front and just kind of tracks along the warm front. You get these very, you know, you don't have to worry about an HP mess, which in terms of Nebraska, pretty rare to not have to worry about HP tornadoes. And if I remember right, the way the surface features were, well, and the cold front behind the warm front kind of squeezing together, I'm wondering if that cold front was pushing that warm front, ahead of it in a way, and that just kind of stuck with the tornado or the storm, just kind of stuck with it. You can see here it's kind of breaking down again. Kind of going back to that big multi-vortex stage where it just has these massive, well, right here it's kind of had that massive tube, but it had little fingers around it. But yeah, in this day and age, this probably could have been very impressive footage, especially with 1080p. And a good wide angle if you were just south of it, so you can get that structure too. Although these people really haven't heard of a tripod, but I think they stop here pretty soon. Yeah, so they can actually kind of sit and watch it. And of course, some local pulls up next to them, so now they're talking about the weather. He just said that they are south of it, so we're looking back north, which maybe not due north, but still, I mean, it's still very nicely, well, if they ever point the damn camera at it again, it's very nicely contrasted, even though they're looking north. So that means that forward flank has to be off to the right just a little bit. So yeah, this is a very well ventilated storm, and I would imagine that if you were chasing this storm, you would really want to punch it, hook slice it from the west, because you can see there's a lot of clean air off to the west. So that probably means that the west facing side of the tornado is probably, well, you can kind of see it in the video, getting illuminated quite well with the sun. So I mean, that right there could easily make your year in chasing, if you got that perfect angle with something like that.
Absolutely. I personally, I'd probably want to be just kind of north of that tornado.
Of course, yeah, you want to. I mean, that's another good angle too. Is from the north side. I mean, you could see the forward flank isn't really behind it too hard. The contrast is so well that it's probably not a very heavy precip core on the immediate north side of it. So yeah, you could definitely get up there safely and look south and get that very high contrasted look. So. Now here they are, I believe they turned around. That right there, that farm is their house, and there's a tornado. They're kind of on a vantage point where they're looking back down, which I think a lot of people would need to start aiming for that if you want to get a good shot. Is kind of get that high vantage point where you can look down onto the horizon. That seems to add an entire new element to what you're watching, when you can actually see not just the ground that it's on, but even the ground behind it. Obviously not the best camera equipment, that they have, but still pretty impressive. Okay, they're getting rained on now, and I don't know, I guess they're still sitting in the same spot, or I don't know what they're doing.
They're probably getting a little RFD there. It looks like the RFD is starting to fill in a little bit. Yeah. It was super, super dry and clear there at the start. You can still see it's really bright behind them, though. That storm's probably not too far off the boundary. That usually happens there when you get that storm right on the boundary. It's out in the clear air and it's sunny behind it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, right here you can see they're kind of just looking at some of the trees and stuff that are down, but you can see how sunny it is back here after the storm has passed. So, like I said, personally, me, I would probably come in from the west and try to get that backlit, or not the backlit, but the front lit tornado with structure, on a wide angle. But you said, and I would agree with you too. Coming in on the north side, getting a nice um, kind of silhouette look to it would probably be just as excellent. So that's about it for that. I think they're just kind of looking at power poles that are down. So yeah, that's actually a very impressive tornado, and they're the Grand Island tornado, I believe, was, like I said, an F3. First tornado reports on that storm was at 5:19 p.m. So yeah, you're pretty much close to sunset when it comes to viewing that storm. Uh, so the only other good footage I got from this day, obviously, is the stuff in Heston and Gozelle, Kansas. Really interesting. I know everyone kind of knows that famous Heston footage that it goes through town and does all the damage. But I don't know if a lot of people have seen just before that where there was actually two tornadoes on the ground at once, and they actually merged together to kind of form that big or wedge-ish looking, uh, tornado. Well, it wasn't quite a wedge, but still pretty large and massive.
What is that clicking noise you got in the background? It sounds like a film projector.
Am I still getting clicking noises? Okay.
It sounds like you're like queuing up the Heston footage on an old school film projector. Like
Gather around, kids. Let me get the projector going. Get the old film reel. Now, I thought I had problems with my headphones, and that's why I kind of wanted new headphones, and I thought my old ones were causing that. But if it's still doing it, it has to be one of these I have USB extensions in my computer, so it might be one of those because they're kind of old, and maybe there's something in it that's causing a bit of.
yeah, you just fixed it. It's gone now.
Yeah, I know I had that problem earlier, and it kept coming in and out. So. All right, so let's go ahead and queue up the. Actually, well, while we watch this, we can watch this, but I believe James Gustina was going to try to jump on. And I think like I said, I think I may know his problem uh, with what's going on. And of course, he's calling me on Skype. Let me tell him to get on Hangouts. So let's say you have the ability to target any one of these, anywhere on the setup. Like you had the time off and whatever. Would you have chose the southern Kansas target, looking at what would have been, some meager low-level flow and just a dry line to work with? Maybe there was an outflow boundary, maybe there was some morning precip, but would you have chose that area where the strongest rain would occur? Would you have picked the triple point in northern Kansas and just kind of played it safe, or would you have gone up on the warm front and hoped to get some of that delicious warm front action?
I'm not sure the triple point and the warm front are actually kind of the safer bet because, again, the temperature and dews were lower up there, and it's early March. I'd be worried that we're not going to have enough instability up there. And it kind of reminds me of April 14th, 2012, actually, where the warm front play was really socked in, and it didn't get warm enough up there to destabilize properly. It was a 45 hatch tornado, but it busted. And again, Central Kansas and Central Oklahoma went on April 14th, just like they did on that day as well. I don't know, it's difficult to say just looking at a handful of surface obs in the 500 millibar chart. I'd probably want to look at it in more detail, but just looking at the parameter, just looking at those plots, I'd probably be in Oklahoma actually, because the moisture is better down there. And it's actually closer to that more significant shear. There were those 70 knot 500 millibar wind barbs down there in Oklahoma. So even the shear and the moisture looked better to the south, but something had to have been going on in central Kansas there. Another boundary, I'm assuming. Obviously,
Okay, so
they had strong solar heating from Nebraska down into Kansas. You could see all that clear air, but yeah, I'd want to see VisSat and a few other plots too.
let's go back to these reports page, and Skip would have chosen that Oklahoma target. There were tornadoes down there, but depending on where you went, if you stayed near the metro, you were getting a tornado at 4:43, which would have been pretty much right in the middle of the afternoon, or you would have had to wait until 6 p.m. down near the Red River, kind of in that southern Oklahoma area, and hopefully, I mean, I don't know what these tornadoes down south look like, but zooming in here, I'll try to zoom in here as best I can so everyone can see this. But you can see it seems like one parent storm on the Red River probably did all the tornado producing here. And then the one near the metro, it looks like there's two tornado tracks kind of overlapping each other, probably a satellite tornado or something. Maybe maybe we had a sort of Pilger event where we had kind of a twin meso setup. I'm not sure. Looks like F2 tornado went through there. But so I mean, there you go. I mean, what do you do? Would you have stuck near the metro, knowing where the metro is and how to chase around the metro, and gotten the earlier tornado with probably best best lighting, or would you have waited until and be patient for the 6 p.m. tornado right around? I mean, 6 p.m. man, it's like pretty much dark.
Right.
For the most
I mean,
part.
again, we're working with really limited information here. And in in the early 90s, that's all they had in a lot of cases. I mean, they had more than this, but still, yeah, you're playing the southern end of the setup. You're often working against the cap down there. The cap's probably stronger and it's holding off initiation. And we probably had a southwest flow right over the warm sector there in Kansas and Nebraska. Oklahoma might have just been getting a glancing blow, so they didn't have all of that initial lift right off the bat. I'd want to look at that 500 millibar chart and the surface odds and really see where the timing is all coming together there.
Okay, let's take out the factor of it's 1990. Let's say this is 2015. This is March 13th, 2015, and this is, I mean, obviously we don't have as much data coming through back then, and we don't really have that data now, but let's say it's 2015 and you have a choice. I mean, do you go with the colder temperatures aloft? Because you can see the big difference, down in Oklahoma with the temperatures, compared to, well, I guess it's all the same. I'm looking at the wrong thing, but the dew points, I guess you could say, is a little more weak in the mid-level, especially around Oklahoma City. But I mean, I don't know, man, because look at that OKC 500 wind bar, barely 25 knots down there.
Yeah.
It's such. Yeah. See, if it was me, I may have targeted maybe northern Oklahoma, kind of right where that edge of that mid-level flow is, and right off the dry line. And I don't know if I actually would have gone further north on the Heston storm, but if you go back to the reports page here, there was some tornadoes in northern Oklahoma that went into southern Kansas, so maybe I could have been on that. But this is one of those cases where you kind of want to go back and make sure you don't skip anything in terms of what you're looking at, because this could be an easy day to screw up, obviously. It's just so weird. Yeah, I've actually never really looked at the data too much on this, but when I started looking at it today, I was like, really, this was the setup? Like, how is that even a good day in terms? I mean, I guess for March standards, it's pretty good, but yeah, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to try to add James on here. I believe he may have fixed his issue. So, okay. Anything going on in the chat room?
Caleb got us astounding of out of Norman and 0Z. I'll post it a link in the chat here. If you've got Storm Track chat handy, you can scroll and get it.
Success.
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank fucking God. I'm so sorry, dude.
Everyone welcome James Gustina, master of technology.
Oh my God. I feel really bad. I'm so sorry about the past couple days, dude. It's been a struggle.
Man, don't worry about it. Shane was, I invited Shane last night to talk with me, and we ended up talking for like an hour and a half, just kind of riffing, waiting for you to jump on, and then, eventually he may have drank a few too many, and luckily Skip came in and Wesley came in, so we were kind of talking about stuff too. So.
Okay. Yeah. So yesterday, I have to tell you about this because it was hilarious when I figured it out. The router we have, so on Christmas Eve, a line of storms came through ahead of a cold front, knocked out our power. Apparently, the first surge didn't do anything to the damn router. The second surge melted the inside, like little iron filament of this router that's connected to like the cable into the wall. So I pulled this thing out yesterday night. This thing, Marcus, I kid you not, I pulled it out with some tweezers. It looked like someone had like held it over a campfire for like 3 hours. I put the next router in. We had two Belkin routers. Put that one in. Promptly blows everything. The Ethernet cord did something. I don't know what the hell happened to it. So we're on our third router right now.
Well, hopefully you got it all figured out, though.
Yes, I should be good now.
All right, cool. Well, we're kind of going back in time and looking at some old setups. I don't know if you've really ever looked at March 13th, 1990, which was a pretty big day that we've been kind of discussing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've actually seen any of the data from that day.
Where were the tornadoes? Was that northern Oklahoma?
Well, they were kind of spread out here. I'll turn the screen share on and you can see it. Okay, hold on. This has got to happen the right way or it doesn't work right. Okay, so this is the reports page. You can see tornadoes pretty much all along the dry line from southern Oklahoma all the way up through Nebraska.
Yeah.
And over into Iowa and stuff, which would have been probably along the one front. But this is the surface plots, which we've been kind of discussing as quite an odd-looking setup. Not much moisture to work with. Maybe from early March it wasn't a bad thing. You could see quite a bit of 60 dew points in Kansas and stuff. But of course, this was probably the most famous day for Heston, Kansas, the strong F5 tornado.
Yes, first saw that. Go ahead.
No, it's just that's probably the main tornado of the day. Of course, Grand Island, we just saw earlier, was quite an impressive tornado, especially for dew points only in the mid-50s. But it was right along that one front. It had to have been so. And then here's the 500.
Holy hell!
Quite I don't know if I've seen too many of these where you kind of have the double low set up with the one in the four corners and one in western Nebraska. Interesting note here, James. You could see that the 500 millibar flow was really restricted more to the southwest. You had 90 knot barbs here in Amarillo and down in Tucson, Arizona. You get up to Dodge City and it's 75, which is still pretty impressive. But if you remember, like I said, there's tornado reports down in southern Oklahoma where there's not much flow at all.
Yep.
And yeah, and up here in Grand Island where there was a wedge tornado on the warm front, What we were talking about, what I skipped was if this was a 2015 setup, would you have taken, would you have gone for the kind of the nose of the flow, the 500 flow in southern central Kansas? Would you have played the triple point in northern Kansas? Would you have played the warm front in Nebraska? Or would you have rolled the dice on something happening in the dry line where there was more moisture, but you saw that there was not much flow to play with?
Oof. Well, just looking at that, yeah, that chart, I honestly probably would have picked an initial target of somewhere around maybe, uh, probably somewhere between Wichita and Salina. I guess maybe, or I guess a little narrowed down a bit. Probably was aimed for Wichita to start the day. Although I'm honestly not sure if I would have seen tornadoes that day because I kind of have a bad tendency of second guessing myself. So I
So
probably
Wichita to Salina at I-35, which, yeah, I mean, I would imagine if you played it patient enough. I mean, the first tornado report on that Heston tornado storm was at 4:34 p.m., which, there wasn't much going on before that. There was apparently a random tornado report out by Dodge City at 2:36 p.m., which
yeah
is an interesting note because you think 2:36 p.m. that's 2036Z in early March. Well, the surface chart is at 21Z. This is a 21Z surface chart. You can see the dry line has just blown through Dodge City like nothing.
yeah
This is just a few minutes after that tornado report. So that shows that this was probably a very fast advancing dry line,
yep
probably a pretty strong cold front coming through, blowing through. So,
yeah that was probably literally a crashing. Like I saw that thread the other day. It was literally a crashing dry line situation.
yeah, this is definitely one for that thread, discussing the crashing dry line setup where this dry line was really getting pulled to the east. Perhaps maybe some. Well, you can see behind the dry line, pretty typical to early March. You have the really dry air in the southwest, so it really mixes that dry line further east. Basically, this is the story of 2011 up until 2014, where the dry line might have started out here in the Panhandle in western Kansas and Oklahoma Panhandle, and then as the day came on, it just pulled that dry line further to the east towards I-35.
You see how the
Yep.
dry line bulges to the east out there in central Kansas? I don't know. I lost the map now. I just see James. Um, like, hey, this is common on a lot of Kansas setups, but I think that that region there is often kind of, it looks good on the parameters, but storms often don't form there. It's kind of this void, and then as soon as the dry line kind of straightens out in a more north-south fashion, which often happens down by Wichita, then you get storm initiation again down there. So I kind of get suckered towards that bulge, I think, which would be kind of the Salina area. But maybe the better bet is to just go further south down that dry line.
So,
One thing I noticed, though, check out this surface op down here at Gage behind the dry line. You can see it's almost a due south, so, I really would like to see like the 850 moisture plots for this day because if you have a surface flow where it's due south on the backside of the dry line, there's some parts where it is southwesterly, like up here in Kansas. But, further down the dry line where it's not such a well-defined dry line, it's kind of a spread out dry line. Man, I do not target that area because it never, ever works when you have a dry line that's like that.
yeah, and a lot, especially in earlier days of the year, you won't have like that 12 degrees Celsius cap at around 700 millibars because you're not getting that warm source region back there into New Mexico and down towards the Pecos Valley. But a lot of times, southern ends of the dry line that early in the year, especially down that way with weaker flow, it just tends to be either it gets capped off or it turns into what you had in central Texas this year, which was just a HP hailer mess that ends up congealing, muddles the dry line up. It's kind of a diffuse dry line the further south you go, and you're kind of playing a crapshoot there.
if it were me, and I don't know if I answered this with you guys, but if it were me, I probably would have actually, gone to northern Kansas if I had, the means to do it. Simply because I would have watched this 500 flow where, probably kind of nosing into that northern Kansas area, right to the east of that triple point.
Yep.
And, even though the surface flow is not that impressive up there, you just kind of have to hope that the dynamics of the shear kind of come into play and hope that you get enough instability up there, because you can see the dew points are not that impressive. I mean, Grand Island up here up north is a 60/55, which you don't really associate with large wedge tornadoes at all. You kind of look down in Oklahoma, and there's that 75/68 in Lawton, which is, like Skip said earlier, it's kind of the outlier plot on this map. But that area down there was just so displaced from the 500 millibar flow that I don't know if I would have actually stuck in Oklahoma. I would have probably gone further north.
So it's also interesting that too. You can see what time is this 500 chart from?
This would be 0Z.
0Z. So yeah, you have probably what happened was you can see that jet streak in southwest in the panhandles, basically. That upper right exit region just south of there, which would have been probably I don't know, maybe like up closer to the like right there south of Salina. That's probably what set the Hesta tornado, because that was a dual F5 tornado storm, was it not?
Well, yeah, it was two tornadoes at the same time that kind of merged into one and just kind of grew from there to this powerful F5 tornado, which we'll go ahead and try to watch some footage of that and see if that seems to work. I got myself set on that. So, by the way this has been working, James, is if you do talk, it does kind of come back to your face. But if I talk, I guess it brings it back into the footage. So, but that's fine. I mean, you can definitely talk, and I'll just try to bring it back to the footage as quickly as I can.
Okay.
So this is the first initial tornado on that storm near Heston, and there's the big one, kind of behind everything, and then you saw the new one just developing right there. I don't know how long into the storm's life we're in right now, but I would imagine it's pretty far along if you got a big tornado like that already and a new one developing.
It's probably pretty deep into the mature stage if there's already one occlusion happening.
Yeah, and you can see the this tornado on the right. The way the wall cloud is behaving, you can just tell that it's going to be a pretty strong tornado. I don't know if you guys ever noticed that, but these new mesos that develop, when they usually have that really rapid movement in the wall cloud, they usually tend to be quite a bit stronger tornadoes than the predecessor. Maybe that's just something I've seen on the few times I've chased and seen actually that happen. And you'll notice, and just like the Grand Island tornado we watched, just behind the tornado and off to the left, it's pretty clear sky. So this storm probably was not too far off of the dry line, and I would imagine the dry line is still advancing eastward at a pretty reasonable rate. I wouldn't imagine it stalling out anywhere, especially when you had down there in southwest Kansas around Dodge City, there was some pretty strong southwesterly low-level winds that probably pushed that dry air. So I would imagine that dry line didn't really stall out very much, or may have slowed down, but
not by much.
Yeah. So this old tornado here on the left, it's going to go through a breakdown phase, just kind of become this small stovepipe, and then this tornado on the right just kind of becomes this cone tornado, and they'll merge together. It looks like, at first I kind of thought maybe it was just they were rotating around each other, but they actually look like they just kind of become one tornado, which I don't know how many times. I'm pretty sure that's kind of a rare thing, isn't it, guys? I mean, to
Yeah,
see that happen.
most of the time when there's a handoff like that, the two separate mesocyclones don't merge. The two separate tornado cyclones don't merge because a lot of times there's usually a pretty well-defined RFD cut in between the two. But that one's not too much farther down the rear flank gust front than the new one.
Yeah, and you can see here the one on the right started to gain some strength, and yeah, that one on the left just kind of creeps in closer. And you can see some RFD cut behind the two. It almost looks like the RFD started cutting around the old one, and it almost like started to cut in front of it, and that's what kind of, I guess that's kind of what helped it pull both of them together. Run, doggy, run. Yeah, you can see the RFD cut pretty nicely there on the left here, the first original tornado. You can see that one on the right getting those nice horizontal vortices there, so that thing's getting stronger and stronger. But that one on the left is still pretty impressive. I mean, just kind of that drill bit, look to it.
Yeah.
And getting pretty close here. I think the first tornado actually kind of rotates around it like half a revolution, and then they just kind of meld together in one massive tornado here.
I'm kind of surprised. It's pretty good video quality for 1990. Usually most of these tornado videos are shot with potato.
Yeah, we were watching that Grand Island wedge, and yeah, that was probably not the best camera you could buy in 1990, obviously.
Yeah. And there it goes.
I mean, just that tube on the right alone, that's so awesome. Kind of the twisty, windy Wizard of Oz look to it, but you can see here that tornado starts to weaken considerably in size as it just kind of sucks itself into this big developing wedge tornado.
Yep. Oh man, it's pouring here. Jesus.
Is my audio clicking again?
Not that I can hear.
Now, interesting about this setup, and Shane mentioned it yesterday, and I really didn't know this, but apparently as soon as this day happened, the next day there was quite a snowstorm over some of these ravaged areas, which is not uncommon for March setups where you have those really powerful, you still have those really powerful Arctic blasts behind these setups, and
Yep.
You can get snow pretty easy.
So March 2nd, 2012, there was actually, I think Louisville picked up about 3 to 4 inches, and so did Cincinnati, like just almost immediately after that night.
Yeah.
That cold front that came through, I think it was probably about a solid, 40, 50 degree temperature difference on either side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can see here now that's pretty much the wedge right there.
Yep.
That RFD has really blown through and carved out that storm nicely. You can see the inflow band here on the right side.
So that's a huge beaver tail.
Yeah. Man, that is definitely just, that alone is just an impressive sight when you see those wedges kind of develop, and that RFD really clears out a lot of that base, around that tornado. Yes, sir, that sucker is huge, according to the audio.
Oh yeah, Marcus. Also, so do you have your little box selected on here, like your video box?
Yeah, it should be selected on mine.
So I was just making sure, because that might be what's like, if I keep talking, like it shouldn't switch over, I guess.
I don't know. The thing was we were doing this all day yesterday, me and Shane, and I thought I had it set to where, I thought it did it on its own, where it shared and we wouldn't show us, but I guess when I talk, it doesn't come up, it doesn't switch to my face, but when anyone else talks, it switch back. So like when me and Shane were watching stuff, it kind of switched back to his face when he said something.
Yeah.
So And if it's not happening now, then awesome. I hope you guys tell me. That way I know what to do to prevent that, because I know I thought me and Skip were having some issues on even earlier today. But
Say it's working. Yeah, say it's working fine right now.
okay. Yeah, this this tornado got massive quickly. I mean, here it is, just wedge form. Basically starting to make its march towards Heston right now.
Yeah.
And so if you're chasing this, I would imagine that they were probably, the storm was moving northeast. They were probably just to the east of it as it developed, and as it kind of morphed together, it was more towards the north. So they're looking north.
Yeah, so they're almost due south right now.
So question is, you got this big wedge tornado. How do you chase this thing? I mean, do you just kind of stick to the south of it? Do you want to play it safe, or do you try to kind of cut up in front of it? What would you do?
Kind of depends on the road options, I guess.
Well, this is Central Kansas, so the options are awesome.
Yeah, so pretty good, because this is like almost west of 35, right?
I believe, yeah, it's west of Hutchinson in that area.
Oh, sweet, yeah, that area is beautiful. Yeah, I'd probably feel pretty comfortable getting maybe more northeast of that to get a view in, but I definitely wouldn't want to be more than maybe within 2 miles of it at the best. So probably 2-3 mile cushion.
You can see here, the tornado is very, very, very hard to see. I mean, you see the right side of the wall cloud here in the meso structure. So you don't want to get too far south of it, because then you won't see anything. I don't know. See, it's great road network. That's one thing. So you can definitely stair step your way into a better position, kind of east northeast of that.
And honestly, it's like I've kind of gotten used to faster moving HP storms just from so many years of absolute garbage setups back this way. I'd feel pretty comfortable even if it was like an early March setup out on the plains, being a bit closer than I usually would, back here like on a March 2nd kind of day. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near any of those kinds of storms, but I could probably see, getting within somewhere close to the notch or somewhere near the bear's cage, but not in the bear's cage.
Yeah, that storm's just really gnarly, and of course, when the storm started going through Heston, it seemed like it kind of got some more clear air around it, but maybe sticking to the east of it would have been just fine about that point, which I will bring up now so we can watch that again. Of course, this is probably famous footage I think everyone's seen of the actual Heston tornado actually going through Heston itself.
Yep.
Quite a damaging tornado. Obviously did F5 damage. Really interesting to see structures actually kind of getting disintegrated, where it just looks like a powder just kind of blowing into the tornado, which, I mean, you really don't even see that too much these days. I don't think I've seen that in quite a while. So, I think we lost James. Might have to fill in, Skip. So was that working, Skip? Did it actually not cut back to James when he's talking or anything during that? Did you notice?
It was cutting to him at certain times. I'll have to look again to see. You could try with that video you're gonna play and me talking too. I mean, I'm talking right now and it's not cutting to me. So.
Well, I don't have it screen shared yet, but yeah, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and screen share and I'll select me as the main viewer, I guess, and we'll see if that works out. So hopefully you guys in the chat room can tell me if this is going to work out. Hang on. No, come on. You were doing fine earlier. Oh. All right. Well, let me know if this is working. If it's screen sharing to you guys.
Yep, we can see
Okay.
it now. I'm talking and the video is not cutting over to me.
Okay. So, like I said, still quite a bit of clean air around it. This is obviously down the road from that first footage we saw. This kind of reminds me of that April 14th stuff where 2012, where we were talking about how one side of the tornado was a very violent motion to it, whereas the other side is not as violent, but it's still rather strong.
I just scraped it off my hands, fucking water. There's a lot of spit on that. See how it comes out? Oh.
Yeah, so
But I couldn't use my hands.
we're looking towards the town of Heston. I don't know exactly where this guy's at. I would imagine he is due east of the tornado or due east of Heston at this moment. This really does look like the April 14th day, 2012, up in that Langley, Kansas tornado.
Yeah.
It's very popular. So you can see, well, it may be hard to see on the stream, but the motion around the tornado, you can just see it. It's just extremely violent, very rapid rotation around that. Right about here, you can start hearing the roar. So, and excuse me for the background noise. I might need to figure out where to do this where I can kind of be in private. You can see some of the damage going on near the base. See how the debris getting pulled up on the left side from the surface, so.
Yeah, that's your ghost train at work right there, feeding that tornado with that rear inflow jet.
And here, this is where I was talking about, where some of these structures just kind of like pulverize or almost, I don't know, I guess that's not really cement getting pulverized. It's probably just all the dust and dirt around the building kind of getting pulled up. And I remember watching this as a kid, and I kept thinking, how the heck did that water tower survive?
Yeah. Really concentrated, tight debris cloud. Definitely a drill bit.
Are you back in, James? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, this is pretty violent tornado. This is, in terms of actually seeing destruction, this is probably up there on the list in terms of the amount of debris that you actually see getting thrown around. I mean, I don't know, I'd probably have to rank Pampa, Texas as one of the number, or at least top 3 in terms of watching debris getting tossed around. Still a pretty large, like an oversized stovepipe here. And the camera guy's getting some RFD, and I believe that's right there, the white is the original tornado, and I think there's another one developing to the left. You can see that lowering. We can see, well, that's exactly what's going on. It's the old, I believe that's the old tornado here on the right side, kind of rotating around the old mezzo, and that new one going on behind it to the left. So yeah, Skip, on that tornado, would you have just kind of staying, trying to stay east northeast of that thing?
Yeah, the initial angle looked the best to me, and so you're just kind of east of the tornado, and if you're gonna hold that east position, that would be really really good, I think. Um, but yeah, you probably want to stay east or just southeast of it. I don't think I would want to get too northeast of it because again, you don't want to be in the path. You want to make sure you're clear of that path. If you're north of that tornado, you probably have a good view, but you're not going to want to race to the east to get ahead of it. You want to either hold your position north or let it go off to the east while the hook hits you there. Yeah, with those high shear setups, you often have a lot of clear air to work with.
That's probably the one positive of that. You may not have the strong instability, but those early season setups, they can really become a nice tool of the setup in terms of having not as much moisture to work with, which is a good thing because you don't get those massive HP supercells. So you kind of get more of a low precip or just kind of a classic supercell look to it. And like you said, high shear just provides excellent ventilation for these storms too, which helps out a lot. But of course, the downfall is higher storm speeds and ground motion. So you kind of need to be on your toes when you're chasing those two. All right, so that kind of wraps up that March 13th. I don't know if you want to keep going. We can check out. I got a lot of footage from Maker 2691, and sorry, and also got some stuff from May 29th, 04, which is a more recent day, so there's a lot more footage and probably more information available. You didn't chase that day, did you, Skip?
Which day?
May 29th, 2004.
No.
Was that before your time?
Actually, I'd have to look here. Let me see. Consult the old chase log. If I did, I was up in Iowa or something.
Somewhere rather close to home.
Yeah, I wasn't hitting Kansas. Anything in 04. Not much. I think I got in Kansas a couple times.
I believe that day was
my rookie year.
I don't know if anyone in the chat
Illinois has
that
some
day.
really
I'd like to
big
hear.
days right around then, so I was probably hanging around there. So I think, yeah, May 30th was a high risk in Illinois. So I chased that day, but
That was
not
probably a pretty stout system that came through. Because I know I was looking at the actual storm reports, and the day before was a couple of pretty large, well not large, but there was a couple of pretty massive supercells kind of tracking through the Sioux Falls area, the tornado reports. And the interesting about this day was it's also another big spread out day where there was reports just kind of up and down the worm sector, to say.
Yeah.
Luckily, with this storm, with this day, I can consult SPC.
Yes.
Okay, are you back with us?
Yeah. I'm only going to be able to be on for probably about another 30 minutes because the internet's about to probably go down again soon. And fuck with this stupid weather out there.
All right, well, we're going to skip ahead to May 29, 2004. 93 tornado reports that day, covering several states from North Dakota down to South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Iowa, and, well, not Iowa, Missouri, I believe, was the other state. So there were actually, there was one fatal tornado that day in DeKalb County, Missouri, which is pretty close to some good chasing friends of mine. You didn't chase that day, did you, James?
04? No.
No, I think I asked you that. Yeah, there's actually quite a bit of footage. Robert Prentice has a very good collection in his channel with that storm. Probably this now. See, I kind of wish Shane was on with this one because I'm sure he could talk about it. He was on that storm that was in south central Kansas where, and Robert Prentice got really good video of this, where you had this strong, tight tornado just kind of carouseling around the actual mesocyclone. So it would actually move this way a little bit, then all of a sudden you see the base of it tilt over and it just gets swept back the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty impressive tornado to watch. Yeah, you guys can actually pull up SPC on this one. They actually have all the information on this one and kind of some different charts. I'll go ahead and so that way everyone can see here.
Big tornadoes on this day. Big tornadoes.
Wedge in Argonia, Kansas, which is southwest of Wichita that day.
Yep, I saw Harper County also had thrown in there.
Harper County, I believe there was. I'll have to look through my things, but a lot of the big tornadoes were actually happening in Kansas, and you can see here. This was a high-risk day, and this was a very large high-risk day in terms of coverage. Very reminiscent outlook to April 14th, which the only reason I use that day is because it was a classic day.
Wow. Can you imagine a day like this? Like, it'd be probably even worse than April 14th was.
Interesting enough, I believe this day was on a full moon day. I remember that much. So, the full moon days kind of make some weird stuff happen in terms of superstition. Yeah, that's a big 25% outlook. I mean, from northeast Nebraska down to south central Oklahoma, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I-40 up to well past Interstate 80. You can see the upper level flow was very, very nice. Although it wasn't so much of a big bowling ball type of low, you can see here on the 500s. The center of the low stayed well up to the north in the northern Rockies. The flow wasn't even all that impressive, as you can see also.
Yeah.
With, not even 50 knot 500s, but that's kind of that sweet spot between 40 to 60 knots is that real sweet spot where you have enough healthy shear coupled with not so fast, storm motions.
Yeah. Can you go 250 millibars for a sec?
There you go.
Yeah. Wow. That is.
It's not that. It's not a very common look. You kind of have that.
Yeah.
That upper level jet streak is further south into the Oklahoma area, and you can see quite a bit of diffluent flow up here near Nebraska, where I believe there was still a lot of tornado reports up here, all the way up in, like I said, North Dakota had a tornado report too.
Well, that's the thing. You have that really, really strong diffluent region there in south, like around southeast South Dakota into Minnesota, and then you have a really, really strong ridge right next to it. That it looks similar to what you'd expect in early June up in Minnesota or the Dakotas. Kind of big low right into that ridge.
Stuff in my mouth.
Oh, I got chocolates right here from Christmas son going fat.
Failed sugar cookie.
This is sugar cookie? I swear to God, this tastes like cornbread.
It tastes like shortbread.
Yeah, this doesn't taste like a sugar cookie. This is a biscuit.
It's overmixed.
Yeah. Marcus, were you was the Conway Springs tornado one you were talking about? Come in.
Yes, that is the tornado I was thinking of. The Conway Springs, Kansas, Milan to Conway Springs, which I don't remember. I guess that's all part of that. I mean, There was the original tornado of that storm was near Attica, Kansas. Just kind of a nice, beautiful stovepipe tornado that lasted a while, and then that eventually handed it off to that Conway Springs kind of carousel, mesocyclone chaser kind of thing. And then I believe after that, it handed it off near Argonia as the kind of a large, really fat stovepipe / wedgish tornado.
Yeah. I
Now,
was kind of, I was just looking too at the day after that. That was the Secor, how you say it, Illinois tornado that caught everyone.
Yeah, look at this storm report page for the next day. This is what Skip was talking about, is it being a high-risk day. And I would imagine that it was high risk specifically for wind, because that's what it looks like.
Yep.
Well, there you go. There's the 4-panel.
Man.
Yeah,
Now,
I saw the Secor tornado. It was disheartening. Those were the days where I was chasing without radar, just a weather radio, and there were so many storms and there were so many tornado warnings. It was like you were in a school of fish and you couldn't catch any of them.
I mean, there's a lot of reports kind of spread out in that area. There's not so much of a concentration, but 100 tornado reports unofficially from that day.
When was the last time we had back-to-back high-risk days, one from the plains and then one into the Midwest?
Oh, that happens all the time. Usually the one in the Midwest is a wind event, though.
Yeah. I was just trying to think of when the last time you had two big days that had lots of tornadoes both days back-to-back in separate parts of the country.
This is the 500 millibars of that day. You could see the more pronounced classic low-pressure system in the northern plains kind of ejecting over the Midwest. Looks like a bit of a stronger flow, which I would imagine that's what warranted the high risk. Looks like kind of the same dynamics, just more shear to work with. So.
Yep.
And the 700 flow looks pretty good too, and you get down to the 850s, and lo and behold, Rob Herx is going to celebrate that he had southwesterly 850s on May 30th, and still had tornado reports that day. So.
I'll say once you get out of the plains, man, Southwest 850s don't mean a damn thing.
Exactly. The 850s really only matter kind of in the plains and the high plains area.
Yeah, so it's when you have to worry about drawing really dry, shitty air from the desert regions, they have to worry about that. That far east doesn't even matter.
Right. So we'll go back here to the 29th and just kind of look at the surface feature. Kind of a classic look to it. This is the 925s, which I don't have surface. Well, I do have surface, basically. I'll look at that in a little bit, but the 925s, low levels. Let's jump to the 850s because that's what everyone seems to care about. Nearly 50-knot flow there in Kansas. So, this was a very, very potent setup. Probably not too hard to forecast. It looked like one of those days where you could just kind of pick anywhere in the warm sector that was in a reasonable distance of the actual flow, and you probably scored something.
It's kind of interesting. That string of setups in the final week of May is probably one of the last. That's one of those great weeks that you always will hear about going ahead the next 20 years. It's kind of like June of '95, where you can just throw a dart at a map on the board and hit a tornado.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many times we were talking about April 14, 2012. I mean, I think still people talk about it to this day as kind of that last classic, Central Plains, Southern Plains setup where you kind of had a lot of good warm sector play, unless you were like me and Skip, who decided we're going to play in between where eventually the two big tornadoes of the day would happen.
Splitting that difference.
Yeah, we played around. We were basically flirting with Medicine Lodge all day that day, and really kind of pissed me off because it just seemed like every storm. I mean, Skip kind of made a point where it was just like every storm that day down in southern Kansas just had that watery look to it. The updrafts didn't look too strong, so there was obviously something there that was kind of inhibiting that.
Yep. I was on the Langley storm from the start, but I couldn't keep up with it, and we kind of fell south of the hook. And the only way to get back into it was to core punch it, and we just thought that was way too dangerous. So we dropped down the line, and we actually thought we would have a better shot down there because there was a lot more opening in the clouds. There was more heating. We thought the Cape would be better, but what we were missing was that boundary that was draped across north central Kansas.
Yeah, that radar loop right that you just showed Marcus was beautiful.
Here we go. I do want to loop this because this was awesome. Let me stop this right here.
Wow.
So here we are at 22Z of May 29th. This is about the time where you kind of hope everything does fire, and sure enough, stuff does fire.
I count 7 supercells already. That's insane.
If you were chasing this day and you were from Norman, you're pretty happy because there's a storm right now on I-40. If you're chasing this day and you were from Wichita, you're happy because there's storms in northern Oklahoma. And if you're everyone else that doesn't live in Norman or Wichita, you're probably in northern Kansas, and you're pretty happy because there's a storm firing, or there's a cluster of storms firing up north.
Yep.
We'll creep this up a little further, and I want you guys to notice this. There's a southern supercell here by I-40. This supercell will track near Oklahoma City. It kind of goes due east. There's another supercell just north of that that really does take on a healthy appearance. But the thing is, I don't know if there's many tornado reports out of that storm. So if you kind of got on that storm, you were getting burned. Now, obviously, this triple supercell cluster right here in northern Oklahoma and Kansas, this was the storm to be on. You kind of had, those 3 supercells that kind of go up and dominate. Now here we go. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought there was another supercell in between here, but there obviously wasn't. All right, we're at 0Z. You're pretty much committed to whatever you're playing now, and people in northern Kansas are probably kind of pissed off. I mean, I think they're getting tornado reports on that storm, but I mean, it's really messy around it. I get really nervous. I don't know about you guys, but when I got all this preset around the supercell I'm on, I get kind of nervous. Because I feel like everything's kind of getting robbed up ahead of it. You don't get that. It's not like it's going into some prime air. You get all this other stuff around it.
And if you get trapped on either side by precip, it gets kind of dicey.
Now you'll notice on the radar too here, you have the dry line stayed further west, which means that you had a very well-established dry line that did not move, and that's exactly what you want. You don't want a dry line. I mean, if you want a retreating dry line, that's good and all. I mean, that helps too, but a stationary dry line is amazing.
Very good.
Yeah, and this is a beastly supercell going through Oklahoma at 0Z, and I think there was a lot of people on it, and it did drop some decent tornadoes. But you can see this cell down in South Kansas is the one that really, really made the show that day, and it's not even that big of a precip block. We'll creep a little further here.
Holy hook.
We are this is 1Z, this is an hour later, and you can see that storm in Kansas is just an amazing looking storm, just all by itself, a lot of clean air ahead of it, and even the storm in Oklahoma looks good, but I wonder, well, and this is an important lesson because if we went back to the surface charts, or not the surface charts, but the upper air analysis, if you remember, there was a lot of good upper level flow in this area at 0Z. So you would imagine that these storms were going to be the play of the day, and especially the southern storm, because you always want to play the southern storm, or do you?
Yeah.
This is kind of one of those cases where the actual storm further north of it did a lot of the photogenic tornado and large violent tornado. There's 2Z, and I mean, you see that keeps going on. And what really got me was that storm up in Kansas kind of died off rather quickly, and then this storm kept going. And then here comes the big MCS kind of behind everything to really piss you off to Especially if you're up north and you're chasing and you see that coming up, you know the day's done. But
Man, that supercell made it all the way from the western high plains of Oklahoma to the corner of Arkansas.
yeah, that's right there. That's the remnants of that supercell. We'll I'll look this again and kind of make it a little faster so you can kind of watch that in action. But yeah, I mean that day was quite a day. Yeah, you're right. That storm made it all the way to the corner of Arkansas that day. So.
Yep. I mean, it's just a classic day.
You'll notice that supercell down south that it actually merged with another one. Right around Clinton, right there, and then it actually started going due east. It kind of right turned. So, you know, if I was chasing that day, I probably would have been on that storm just because A, it's closer to home, and B, it looked healthy the whole time.
Yep. Well, that's interesting too to note. Cell mergers really can just make or break a day for you. Like almost every good tornado day that I can remember underwent at least one cell merger or ingested something into its updraft region before it produced. Like what was the day? The October day in 2012. Storm ingested that second split before it went on to produce. Same thing with March 2nd, same thing with May 25th.
Are you talking about the October day, that day out here in the Panhandle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
that
just
was a strange day.
Just drew in that one storm and just went insane.
Now here's the surface odds, and this is why you're going to see this and you're going to be like, oh, well, that's why this day was big. 70-degree dew points down south.
Jesus.
73-degree dew points quite often. And, right here is Kansas or Wichita, Kansas at 86/73, and this is at 18Z. So we're 1 o'clock, and we got some really, really, really thick air. Some of these are pretty impressive because I would imagine that they're very miserable to sit in. You got a 93/68 out here, and I believe that's what is that, Alva?
Yeah.
97/64 down in Hollis.
God.
I mean, can you imagine just sitting down there waiting for storms, and you're just like, you're literally just melting. I mean, the Cape had to have been just insane this day. I can't pull it up. I don't think I can, but I'm sure there's Cape values somewhere. But I can do QTs. So let's we'll go to observe sounding here. This is the 0Z. Wait, what did I click? I think I may have clicked on the wrong one. Did I click on the wrong one? Oh, don't give me that crap, SBC. All right, well, I guess we'll just do Norman, I guess. So 0Z, 2500 Cape.
And that's probably a rough estimate because surface temps have probably cooled slightly since then.
Yeah, and 3500 mixed layer Cape.
Yeah,
so,
that.
And you can see the density values down here,
4,000 was probably a low estimate at the height, like around 22Z.
Yeah. Interesting, though, that you don't see that really, really backflow here at the low levels in the 850s. It's more of just a due south, which, that's a lesson to everybody, that you don't need, due south winds. Yeah, you don't need that insane turning because, you have that due south winds and here at the surface, but look at the upper layers. They're pretty close to almost due westerly, so.
Yep.
It's all relative. Makes up for it. Yep. Let's see if I can.
Yeah.
I wish I could get that. I thought I had this earlier where I can get on. I guess it was Wichita's sounding, but it ain't working. So this would be Topeka.
Holy hell!
And
Jesus.
That's a lot more impressive than Norman's. Obviously, the helicity values are a lot higher. 3,800 surface Cape with almost 4,000 mixed layer, which is insane. I mean, that's crazy. That's bonkers.
Yep.
So I'm sure everyone's itching to see the footage. I thought we'd kind of go over the technical side of it. Skip, have you seen this SQT? Or is he busy?
Whoa.
No. Look at that. Look at the. This is the sounding in Topeka that day. Nearly 4,000 mixed layer cape and just off the chart in terms of helicity.
Yeah, nice. Classic.
So we'll go ahead and jump into some of this footage here. We'll start off with some of the stuff down in near Attica, which was kind of the initial tornado. Scott Curran's got this one. Everyone got footage on?
Yep.
Okay, let's make sure.
He. You know, Marcus, you drove me to a setup that makes me less than happy right now. I'm looking at sounding.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I was trying to think like the last supposed big day that I chased out here on the Southern Plains, and you know what day it was?
What day is that?
That'd be April 17th of 2013.
Man, that day sucked.
Just like looking at this wind profile, I'm like, why did I even bother?
Well, if I remember right, that day had kind of the S-shaped photograph, which is kind of a no-no in terms of chasing.
Yep, veer to the max.
But check out the moisture, some of the spreads on that day, because if I remember right, on that day there was like, I'm pretty sure I saw something like 100 over 60 something in terms of a spread, and I'm just like, that's, I mean, the LCLs are still high, but that's still really miserable air to be in. Or maybe it was just like upper 90s over 60 something, but it was pretty ridiculous.
Spreads were pretty low further north, but I think, yeah, down south, holy hell, that tornado formed fast. Yeah, down south, closer to the Red River, like near Frederick and stuff, it was pretty goddamn awful.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I think let me do something quick. I don't think I have to set up right. I'm pretty sure it's coming back to you. It looks like it is. So. All right. Get back to that. So, yeah, that's just a gorgeous tube. There's no arguing that. I mean, that's kind of a dream look in terms of my chasing style and everything. That's kind of a dream shot where you just have that beautiful contrast and just a nice tube.
Yep, that'd be a perfect tornado for a perfect day.
And remember, this is the first tornado of this storm, I believe. So for this being the first one of that storm, you got to be pretty happy with what you got. And you got to be looking forward to what the storm's going to be doing down the line, especially if there was a lot more juicier air kind of down the line. Maybe some better low-level flow, and especially when you get closer to nighttime and around that 2 to 3Z time range, especially in late May, that low-level jet really screams when that sun goes down. So,
yep,
I would imagine that's what really helped get that wedge down.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, dude, I have to split because I gotta get up early tomorrow morning for a eye exam. So I will. Will you be on tomorrow night?
Maybe. I don't know.
Okay. Well, if not,
we didn't go over April 26th of '91. So.
What now?
I said we were going to go over April 26th, '91, but we didn't do that. So I might do that tomorrow.
Okay. Yep. Just shoot me a text and let me know, and I should be able to get on tomorrow for longer.
Okay. I might do some research on some of the hardest, like maybe a day that had quite a few tornadoes, but the setup, wasn't that great. Just like March 13th. So.
I actually have a good idea for that. I might bring a day with me too.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
All right, man. Have a good one. Same to you, Skip.
See you later, dude. All right, Marcus, I'm going to hop off of here too, but I think this was a good run, and I made a few notes on maybe things we could do next time, which I'll share with you. But yeah, let's plan on keeping this going.
Yeah, definitely. Well, like you said, maybe we'll do something again tomorrow with some more setups. We might dive back into this day because it was a pretty perfect setup. So. But yeah, I'll keep in touch with you, and we'll see what happens. I really enjoyed kind of talking about like March 13th, where it was a day that didn't look that great. It turned out to be a pretty gnarly day. So.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
All right, man.
All right. Catch you later.
I guess I'll catch you later, buddy.
Whoa,
So, all right, guys. We'll probably cut it a little short there. We'll come and revisit May 29th, maybe tomorrow. I still want to go into April 26, 91. That seemed to be a pretty classic day as well, at least of what I looked at. And of course, there's quite a bit of footage from that day. If you guys have any other days that are kind of older days where maybe none of us really chased or anything like that, then please let me know, and I'll look into it. We'll try to get some data back, and I'll put a playlist together. We could watch some more tornado footage again. So, if anything, if you want to let me know about anything, something I can improve, just PM me in the storm track, or let me know in the chat room. So, see you guys maybe tomorrow.